Welcome to the LVX Files, a podcast for occultists about occultists. I'm your host, Sean, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the LVX Files wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on all the new episodes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 25 of the LVX Files. I'm here with my good friend, Ben Stimpson. He is a fellow Druid. He's a counseling therapist, and we've actually already been talking for an hour. What we're doing is we're doing a bit of like a cross promotion with our podcasts. So the first hour, I was in the hot seat, so I got to do all the talking, and that's on his podcast. And now I'm turning the tables on Ben for this episode of the LVX Files. Now, for all of you that follow me on social media, because we're recording this like 7 days before this episode actually dropped. So by now, for you following me on social media, you'll have seen the link to this episode of Ben's podcast. And for those of you that don't follow me on social media, there's a link in the show notes. So you don't have to necessarily turn this episode off right now and it's not like you're going to be starting in the middle of a story or anything, but definitely check out Ben's episode and then this one, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. Just make sure you listen to both. So
please listen to both, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ben, thank you for being here. It's so great.
This is great.
Yeah, it was so great catching up with you. And that first hour on your podcast was a lot of fun because it just, I do more, being a host of a podcast, I do more of, the interviewing than I get interviewed. So it was just so nice, like I was saying, just to sit back, relax, just talk and not have to worry about anything, not be in the driver's seat for a change. So that was really nice. And that was a good episode. Everyone really needs to really check it out.
To hear your story, that's the thing. They need to hear your story, Sean.
Well, and through conversations that I have with people on the podcast, my listeners get bits and pieces of my story, but not, I try not to talk about myself too much on my podcast, just because, people are here to, listen to the guests and learn about my guests. So yeah, they don't get a lot. And especially with what we talked about, most of what you and I talked about on your episode for your podcast, I just wouldn't bring up on my podcast, So for my listeners that listen to my podcast, I think definitely check it out, because you'll learn a little bit more little bit more about me.
Yeah, I totally feel that. So when I put my podcast together, I was in a weird place. I just moved to Kitchener, so I live in Kitchener now. And a year ago, as of like 2 weeks ago, I moved here. And I was trying to, it was the middle of a pandemic, and I was trying to think, well, how am I going to put myself out there? Because unfortunately, what happened was I was just getting my counseling practice started in Dundas in Hamilton, and then the pandemic hit, and all my clients disappeared. They just went away. Who knew, like, if it would have money, everything was closing down, everything was gone. So I was in a new city. Nobody really knew me up here, and my supervisor's here. But so I started a podcast to kind of use as a marketing strategy. And I didn't realize how much I would get out of it. And I'm sure you get a lot out of this podcast.
Oh,
You seem to really enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's a balancing act, right?
Yeah. My desire to have a podcast predated the pandemic by a few months.
Right.
But, just with me being so busy with my business, it's one of those situations where, oh, I'll wait till I have the time. I'll wait till I have the time. And that's such a ridiculous thing to say, because that just never happens. You don't just magically develop more time. And for me to have more time would mean to have some level of failure in my business as opposed to growth in my business. So, that was just a good excuse for me to not get it going. And I finally did in May of it was May 1st, it was Beltane, May of this year. And it's nice because even though the idea predated the pandemic, I think the pandemic shaped how the podcast, what the podcast became. I think there was, for myself personally, a need for connection and conversation. I mean, I love learning about people, and so that was always going to be a part of the podcast. But I think of just being able to sit and have conversations, and I think that I just had so much more of a need for it, because at that point, well, that was May of this year. So at that point, we were 14 months into the pandemic, so so here we are. And
I feel you on that one.
I'm glad people listen to it. People seem to enjoy it. I got my first review on Apple Podcast was really, really fantastic. And I was just looking at some of my statistics today, because since I launched the podcast, the listenership was always number 1, the United States, number 2, Canada, number 3, UK, number 4, India. Then India surpassed the UK. And just today, I noticed that India is now number 2. So I have more listeners in India than I do in Canada. So it just...
Well, this is the thing. Yeah. Well, this is the thing. So think about the people that you're having on your podcast, right? They're very well known. Most of them are well known occultists, right? And India, it was very strange. Now that I'm actually aware, and I've had a chance to really connect with authors and writers and people like movers and shakers. India and Russia are the 2 major markets for occultism right now. There's like a big push for Wicca in India, which is weird for Westerners to think. Oh yeah, because the middle class in India has money. They're in a culture that is very tradition bound, right? So when it's kind of like Hong Kong, right? New innovation is coming in thinking styles and whatnot, especially in areas that would complement Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever the current religion is, whatever their traditional background is.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting to see that.
Yeah. And, Wicca, even for non-occultists, Wicca isn't exotic. But it would be exotic to Indians because it's European, basically. And that's what I found interesting about getting a distributor for my products for China and Hong Kong. I didn't think that there was going to be a big market for Western magic in China because they have their traditions, and so it was just surprising, to get that email one day from a distributor saying, "Oh, we want to distribute your products in China, Hong Kong."
Oh, I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised at all. Because think Japanese anime, their way of exoticizing magical systems in Japanese anime is to import occultism and alchemy.
That's true.
So you've got a whole group of like Chinese, Japanese, and Korean kids growing up watching like Full Metal Alchemist, which Dr. Robin, all of these different things, right? And so like sigil work and things like that totally makes sense to me. I don't know.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's really
fantastic. Yeah. Oh, well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you. So, like I said, we're turning the tables and now we're
Hot
talking.
seat.
Yeah, we're talking about Ben. Yeah, you're in the hot seat. Um, so what I do with my podcast is I like to start at the beginning, right at the beginning. And with that first experience or set of circumstances that led you on your magical spiritual path, whatever that
Yeah.
happened to be. So let's start there and we'll see where the
Okay.
conversation goes.
Okay. I have to reach back into the depths of time here. Well, and this is the thing. I say that jokingly, but I was thinking about this the other day, and I've actually been involved with paganism and magic for almost 19 years now.
Yeah.
It's been very disconnected because I went through waves of not being really connected with everybody. It was a very solitary thing, but I actually I first became aware of Wicca, and it was like that online, non-traditional, Silver Raven Wolf type Wicca
Right.
when I was about 15, and that was in like 2001. So quite a few years ago now, 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
It was I like so back then, for your younger listeners, back then we didn't have many places. If you weren't in an urban center like Toronto, like LA, like New York, it was very much online, right? So I heard about this thing called witchcraft goddess worship after watching the Mists of Avalon, which was one of my
Oh,
earliest.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it
That
was in grade
movie
10.
did not do the book justice.
No, it didn't. No,
Just as
it
an
didn't.
FYI.
No, it didn't.
However,
No, it
it
didn't.
was
No,
nice. I mean,
no.
it gave us,
Hmm.
it gave us a little bit of paganism
A
uh,
little bit,
on
yeah. Well,
screen.
Angelica Houston. I mean, who doesn't love Angelica Houston? She went from being a witch to being Morticia Adams to being, the Lady of the
Yeah.
Lake, right? She has cornered
I
the market.
Yeah, I love Angelica Houston. I met her when I lived in Toronto, and this was back in my makeup artist days. Um, she was in town filming a movie with Stephen Dorff and well, I'm trying to think of the actor's name. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So they would have um, cast parties all the time, and they'd like rent out a bar, and
Mm.
so it would just be like a private event. And I'm trying to think. Stephen Dorff's assistant and his personal trainer that I would do their makeup, and they invited me to one of the cast parties, and it was so fun. And at one point, I'm sitting at a table, and Angelica is sitting to my left, and at some point, I'm like, I realize you don't want anyone gushing over you tonight, because this isn't like some sort of like public event or fan event.
Yeah.
Like, this is all like the in people. But I mean, I've loved you since I was a kid. You're such an amazing actress. You're so beautiful. You're just amazing. And she kept kissing me on the cheek. Oh, you're so
Oh,
cute. You're so great. Thank you so much. You're so wonderful.
yeah.
And she kept kissing me on the cheek. And I'm like, so this is awesome. I mean, I
Yeah.
I, I worked with a lot of celebrities as a
Mm.
makeup artist, but that was one of the more fun
Mm.
experiences. Just because I mean, it's Angelica Houston.
Is that she loves her gay boys? Let's be
Yeah.
honest here.
And
I've heard
plus
stories. So.
it was this was like a social event. It wasn't like purely like a photo shoot or anything like
Yeah.
that. So it there was just that much more casualness to it. But yeah, no, she was fantastic. She was fantastic.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
Stephen Dorff is so hot. Oh my God. He what was the name of the movie he played? Oh, my memory. Jeez.
Mm.
Um
Let's
what
look this up here.
what queen did he play? I can't remember. Anyways, so we were talking and he brought up that movie and he's like, oh, and my, well, shoot, yeah, you need to find it. The name of the queen. He goes, and that dance. So meanwhile, I'm sitting down. Okay, so I'm sitting down, regular chair height, and he's standing in front of me. Then he starts grinding in my face, and I'm like, oh my god, like this is heaven. Heaven. He's so hot. Oh my gosh, he's so hot. Yeah, so that that was a fun night.
I can imagine. Angela Houston on one side and Stephen Dorff on the other.
Right? My God. I'm getting like kisses and dick and ass. And yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Yeah. So anyways.
I was gonna say probably a lot more fun than what I was doing on that evening somewhere, wherever I was,
Right. Yeah, so okay, so like you discovered witchcraft at the age of 15, but did you have anything in your childhood that you look back on and like, oh yeah, like the writing was on the wall?
Oh, completely. Well, so one of the main reasons why I started looking into it in the first place was I was so I moved to Canada when I was 8 years old from North Wales, and North Wales, for anybody who hasn't been there, it's like the Highlands of Scotland in miniature, right? You've got these beautiful valleys, really like gorgeous landscapes, right? And it's a very old land, right? There are ruins, literally ruins on the outskirts of where my parents' cottage was that were over 2,000 years old, right?
Right.
So it's a very old, not to say North America isn't an old land, all land is old, but you feel that resonance. And so I was originally looking for something connecting me with my heritage, because I moved to the middle of, bumfuck nowhere, Hanover, Ontario, middle of nowhere, 18 churches, none of them wanted me, because around that time I was also coming out. So there was that piece too. Yeah. So when I was a kid, the oldest part of my parents' cottage was about 400 years old. Right? Like, I remember there were some very spooky things that happened. There would be things that would run past windows and we just took it for granted. When I was a child, and I don't talk about this often, but I feel comfortable, I was visited by what people would call the hag. So I didn't have hag encounters when I was a kid. And of course, terrorized by that. But I did have experiences, and even now, like they continue even now, kind of a magical, wonderful life of Ben. But yeah, that like being steeped in that, and then suddenly coming to Canada and having nothing, right? Yeah. Although I say that, I mean, I have had experiences too, but so those.
I mean, realistically, it is different.
Yeah. It is. It is a difference. I feel like the experiences that I've had over here are a lot more controlled, whereas over there, because the land is just seeped with history and seeped with history that's accessible. That the history is there. In North America, because the population of Native Americans was so much smaller and widely dispersed, the history is not as entrenched. Unless you of that blood, like friends of mine who are Native, they know.
And then plus, so much of the history was actively erased.
Yes, but there's that kind of energetic quality too, right? Like friends of mine who, in London down this way, they've told me that when they go past a certain place in Ontario here, they know something has happened there. They don't know what it was, but they know that something happened there. I mean, while I'm just like But yeah, I had experience as a child, and so I wanted something to connect me with that. Now back then, I had no idea of like magic, and I had no idea about energy and those experiences. I only gained that information and gained that understanding later on. And I mean, reading like the silly web pages when I was a teenager, that didn't really give me anything. It wasn't a deep understanding until I really started to connect with people. So I got onto Witchvox, which those of us who are older, we know what that is, right? and I started connecting with people on there, talking to people, and I fell in with a couple of guys who were a few years older than me, gay guys. So first of all, I was coming out, which was a big part of my identity then. And
Yeah.
still, I mean, it still is, but like that really connected with the magic too. And so I was very interested in these people, and ended up, you know, my first big crush was with one of these guys. And I remember my first psychic fair was actually like selling a load of my stuff and then taking a bus down to the airport, to a little hotel down there for my first psychic fair with these people. So I started to have experiences with them, but it was really very shallow. I didn't own it. I didn't really know what I was doing. You know, it was very, you know, yeah. So but kind of took a detour in the spirituality away, and I started looking into Hinduism and Buddhism, and finally I came back, really came back to magic about 7 years ago. Yeah, and that's the other big part of the story, really. Mm-hmm.
So you took a journey through Hinduism and Buddhism, and then you say back to magic. You mean like back to like
back to like neo-pagan, back to occultism, back to the Western mysteries as opposed to kind of those Eastern mysteries.
And was it just like a natural transition, or were you like I no, I need something different because like from the Hinduism or Buddhism, or was it like just like a natural progression?
I think it speaks more to where I was in my life. So I went to university, I went to college. That took a huge amount of my time up, and then I was forced to stop university and put it on hold. And I moved home. There was some mental health stuff going on, and I moved home, and I was basically stuck in the middle of nowhere. Feeling deserted, feeling like I couldn't go anywhere. Because I mean, living in Toronto for 6 years, I didn't learn how to drive. I didn't need a car, right? So I was in the middle of nowhere and I couldn't drive. So I had a process of kind of rebuilding myself and really coming back to myself after that point. And one of the ways that I did that was through studying and really stepping back into spirituality. I found that I was becoming a lot more interested in paths that I could reflect myself in, right? So Hinduism, Hinduism is my main path. Buddhism was just for interest, but Hinduism is a beautiful path, and it really has affected the way I see kind of cosmology and spirit and whatnot. But because I wasn't born in a Hindu family, and because it's not my culture, there was a lot of missing pieces to it, right? So I always felt like I was an interloper, that I was a guest. So I was really looking for something that really was me, right? My background that I could connect with. And I don't know what it was, but like, do you know when you get hunches? Yeah. And you just feel like something big is about to happen and you just need to make that step. Yeah. So I had that experience in 2014. So I'd been living at home for about 3 years, just working for my parents, not really doing anything, kind of bumming around, playing a lot of video games, you know. And I got a hunch. I had a huge amount of money saved, and I wanted to do something with it. I wanted to get my life back, right? So I don't know what persuaded me, and I really regret doing it this way now, but I came across Azure Green's website, and I was looking at all the products on there, and I was thinking, this could be something. Maybe I can open a little shop, you know?
Okay.
Like, I don't even know. Like, I don't even know what I was thinking. But something was there, that little hunch there, right? And so I bought tons of crystals, tons of like, you know, like over like thousands of dollars of stuff, right? I still have most of it here.
Oh no.
Yeah, I still have a lot of it here. Some of the bigger, like more bulkier items.
Okay.
So I started looking around, and I got a flea market booth for 3 months, and then started to go to festivals and LARPs. That's originally how I came across Mythwood Campground. And Mythwood is, and Tribal Hearth events really was the kind of a catalyst to bring me back into alignment with magic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's really the story here. It's not so much kind of me, you know, fucking around with crystals, but So I kind of 2015 I really stepped back into getting out again. I got a driver's license, I got a car, a little tiny smart car, and I was all over Ontario. So I started working the psychic fair circuit. Now my last psychic fair was like, oh God, like 7 or 8 years before, and it was just, as you know, it was a little tiny one that would happen in Toronto that got smaller and smaller and smaller every year until it just fizzled away. And so that was my experience with psychic fairs until I started working the big circuit in Ontario here, and I think I was doing something like seven of the big events each year. And I did that for 2 years. But through that process, I met a ton of people who would be very impactful. Became aware of lived magic as opposed to like embodied magic, as opposed to theoretical magic. And so then just through that process, kind of that led me to where I am now.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
So when you, so through this whole process and you got back into magic, and I'm assuming, you know, there was influences, like people influencing your life in that regards, that got you, you know, were you practicing magic with anybody, or was it just being surrounded by these people and like, I got to get back to the books and start?
Talking about getting back to the books. I mean, that was the biggest problem for me, was I was reading about this stuff for so long. And it was almost like, it was very similar to kind of the gay community for me for a long time, because I was in the middle of nowhere and I didn't know any physical, live, full-blooded gay people. It was a theory for me. It was very theoretical until I actually stepped into kind of, you know, living that life, right? And so when I, it was kind of a weird sort of series of events that led me to going to Mythwood first. So I started LARPing, which is live action role play, a few months before, and because I originally approached them and to sell stuff. And then I started, you know, going and playing myself. One of the pieces to Mythwood, which again, beautiful campground, was that they held LARPs on their land when they weren't doing pagan festivals or Culticon or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
So I came with one of the people who were part of the LARP to visit Mythwood, and I'd heard about it because it turns out Mythwood was only about half an hour away from my parents all this time. And it took me meeting someone in Barrie, which is 2 hours from Hanover, to bring me back to Mythwood to go around. And so when we went on a tour of Mythwood, and I met Cayman and Alex, and they were talking about the events that went on there, and they said, oh, well, you know, in 2 weeks' time, we've got this tribal hearth event, you should come. And I said, well, I'm only half an hour away, you know, it will be perfect, literally like straight down the road. So I showed up, and tribal hearth is filled with, it's a very eclectic bunch. It's they're not just Wiccans, they're not just pagans, they're not just shamans, it's a mixture of all sorts of people. So within that group that I really became involved with, we had people who were involved with the OTO, we had people who were connected with like heathenry and Asatru, kind of eclectic pagans, magic users who had been practicing since the 80s, and some fine individuals, and every single one of them had a different approach and different way, a different form of magic. And they, looking at them and really, you know, really connecting with them, I could see that lived experience, and I wanted it for myself.
Right.
But what I realized, really, I mean, I say that, what I realized was I'd been doing it all by myself, without, like, for years, in little ways throughout my life. I just needed to be kind of contained and shown that, yes, this is magic that you've been doing.
What were there any books in particular that you think of and like, okay, like this book had a profound influence on me in my practice?
Absolutely. Most of the books I was reading were all fact-based. So they were all mythology books, they were fairy tale books, they were things like, oh, I don't know, let me see. I can't even find them now. They were like the old canon, like Starhawk. They were, Margot Adler, the Witch's Bible. But again, none of them I really connected with. Like, I read the material, the rituals were great, wonderful, and all that, but none of them clicked for me.
Okay.
And so when I started to really connect with the people at Mythwood and really in Tribal Hearth, and I started to research again, really stepped back into that research mode, and it was it wasn't new to me. I'd spent years on a web forum called Mystic Wix when I was younger, and I don't it was a bit like Pagan Space.
Okay.
So some of the people on there, like Isaac Bonowitz was on there, Deb Lip was on there, Raven Grimasi was on there, like big names, right? And of course, when I was a teenager, I had no idea who they were, right? Well, I mean, and I find and I mean, certainly a lot of criticism can be leveled against them now. There were quite a lot of Cheops on that web forum too, so I was well aware of what Libra Null was and what Chaos Magic was, and certainly I was very, very well aware of the immense library that Uncle Alistair created for the for Lima, but and Golden Dawn. But I never really read them, and I never really connected it with my life. So the one of the earliest books, about 7 years ago, I picked it up now, and it really connected with me, was an occultist in Germany named Jan Fries. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so his book Visual Magic, which is it's only a tiny little volume, but the way he spoke about sigil work in that, the way he connected it with his daily routine, we were talking about routine earlier, the way that he linked it with parts of his life and made it just normal, and normalized it, really affected the way that I approached my magic. And then after that, I just took off. So the preceding years after that, 2016, 2017, huge, massive growth years for me. Like, I feel like 10 years were like shoved into these like 24 months because so much happened.
Right.
And now
you also had so much theory behind you, because it's not like you weren't reading the books or anything like that. You had the books, you absorbed the books. Now everything is coming out.
Exactly. And that originally caused an issue for me. I remember when I went to the first Tribal Hearth event, I was chosen. There was about 150 people in this group, and the work that they did was really interesting. They took Joseph Campbell's living mythology and crafted connected rituals that told a story, and so my very first magical experience with them was in the stone circle that they constructed. 12 o'clock at night in the middle of August, 60 people in this big space, and we were completely silent.
If for anyone who's listening right now and has listened to every episode of the Lux Files, they'll have heard me talk about Occulticon and Mythwood Campground. But for those who haven't, this stone circle, we know plenty of people that build little stone circles in their backyards that are like 10 foot in diameter. This stone circle is 100 foot in diameter. The stones are massive, like taller than me, taller than
some of them are, yes.
The altar stone is huge. It's huge. This is like a real stone circle. It's so amazing. Mythwood Campground is just amazing, absolutely amazing. Yeah,
I mean, it's a shame what happened to it, but
I don't know what happened to it.
It's been sold.
Okay, because when Occulticon shut down 2019, and it was kind of last minute-ish. I mean, we all paid our fees, we all got our money back, but it was to the point where you know,
It was really coming down to the wire. It
yeah,
really was. Yeah.
we're all preparing for 2019, and then Occulticon got canceled, and
Yeah.
then lots of rumors going around about this and that, and you know, I never heard anything official.
Yeah. So it has been sold, yes. I mean that's on the grapevine, but I also know like the next door neighbors, and it was sold to a because Miffwood it originated as a trailer park, right? So it was a trailer park for like 30 years, and
Oh,
then
I didn't know
oh
that.
yeah, that's why like when you walked around, so you know there were the vast there were the vast of fields and the lake and all that, but when you got into the actual sites, that's why each camping site had a like an electrical outlet, and the way that they were designed, it was so that they would accommodate RVs and caravans.
Oh, I thought you when you say trailer park, I thought you meant like mobile home park.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
No, no,
that's
mobile
exactly it.
like no, not RVs, mobile
Yeah,
homes. You
yeah,
know.
no, yeah, both. I mean, that, yeah, both of them were there. So some of the
Oh,
sites were big enough that they could accommodate like those 30-foot mobile homes. And then others were smaller, and so RVs and like, you know, the small campers and things like that. So
oh,
I never went when it was a trailer park. I only ever knew it as Miffwood.
yeah.
But so they so it's now turned back into that. Honey, can you not please?
So when did do you know when it sold?
I have no idea. I haven't like with the pandemic. I haven't really had a chance to really speak to anybody. So,
I
but it was
wonder,
over last year.
I wonder, I mean, the buildings,
Mm-hmm.
now again, like there are some buildings and the stage, and the
Mm-hmm.
buildings look like they were medieval
Mm-hmm.
Tudor style. There's the stage,
Mm-hmm.
um, all built out of wood, but it looked like a castle, like
Yes.
towers with the crenellations and whatnot. And all the groves and the stone circle and the
Mm-hmm.
stone and the sword on the
Yeah.
little island out on the lake. Seahenge, like all of the pagany
Yeah.
mythic stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
what, like w- what's going to happen to that? Where is it? Is it going to
No
stay?
idea.
You know what I mean? It's just, oh,
Yeah,
it's
I
so
don't know.
tragic. It's so
Yeah,
tragic.
it's one of the yeah. It was a very emotional situation,
Mhm.
definitely. But I also realized that I mean that coming back to that like Buddhism piece, right? Um, that piece around impermanence, right? So this was a piece of land that so many people connected with and worked with magically. There were shrines and altars and
Yeah.
circles and all everywhere, right?
I mean,
Every
remember
corner.
we consecrated the voodoo shrine
Yeah, that
just the
exactly.
year, you know,
Yeah.
2018,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
just how
Yeah.
tragic. How tragic.
But that is so like that's almost part of the point, right? So this work was done, and like to bring it back to like embodying magic, right? Ritual can't go on forever. There needs to be an end or a conclusion or a shift in order for then the ritual work to do its work, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that that ritual can't be resurrected in a different form, or that magic working kind of continued in a different way, but there needs to be that kind of shift, right? At least my opinion, anyways.
Yeah.
And so Mythwood was that kind of, it was a catalyst, it was an embodiment, it was a container for all of this work that all of these people were doing. And then it's now dissolved and those people have moved on to other things. And that's the embodiment of change for me, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it's almost fitting. I mean, as much as it's sad and it's emotional, but it is fitting of that.
I
Yeah.
suppose, you know, you want to look at it in that regards, then yeah,
Mm.
it's fitting and it kind of makes sense. But, you know, it was you know, a place for magic, for ritual, that, you know, just should have lived on just for a
Right.
little while longer. You know, I remember like some people like, oh, we should all, you know, like um uh basically like pool our money and
Mm.
like all have shares in Mythwood, da 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 da
Mm.
da. And like,
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean that's an option. But again, that was back like, that was during like everything was purely rumor. Like,
Yeah.
people were talking that they were going to put it up for sale, but it wasn't actually up for sale. You know what I mean? It was just, there was just so many unknowns at that time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, if that had happened, if people had, like, in retrospect, if people had pulled their money together and the amount to keep it running was quite high, and then the pandemic happened, there wouldn't
Yeah.
have been any way to, so
Yeah.
in retrospect, but it was an emotional thing to leave. I had a lot of growth and a lot of fun times there, and it wasn't just like the ritual and the magic, it was the people too. There was some
Oh,
fantastic people
absolutely.
connected
Yeah.
there.
Oh,
Yeah.
the friendships that I made
Hmm.
because of Mythwood and Occulticon
Yeah,
are just precious.
totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
those are the pieces that you can continue and take with you and bring into different spaces, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I look at the photos um, that I took of Occulticon every now and again, and just those moments were I was just so alive during
Mm,
those times, and looking at the photos, it doesn't feel like memories,
mm,
and what I get a sense of what, you know, how alive I felt and the energy
yeah.
being present in that place with all
Mhm,
those people. And yeah, it's a nice feeling.
mhm.
Um, a little nostalgic, but it's a nice
Yeah.
feeling that, like, to be able to tap into that energy so purely, um, even now,
Hmm. Hmm. And it's how to integrate that into your life, right?
yeah.
So like I went on and I found new communities for myself. I found that same feeling in different spheres.
Mhm.
Obod is one of them. Um, I joined an Elay for Santeria, and so now I really heavily work. Well, I don't work with, because you don't work with Santeria. Lukumi, I should call it. But it's the people, right? It's the people that you really connect with,
Right.
and it's through those people that you have those shared experiences and you embody that. And that's why for me, magic can never be a singular thing anymore, solely a singular thing. Like, it has to be in connection with other people. Like, I really understand that whole idea of coven now. I really do understand that idea of fratterhood, right? Coming together, because you can't do it all. That's what I've really discovered. And that was a humbling experience for me, was to understand that I don't need to do it all. I don't need to know everything. I don't need to know, all the theories, because somebody else can do that. Somebody
Yeah.
else can, yeah.
Yeah, in a group setting, you certainly, I mean, could you imagine if in a group setting you needed everyone to be on par with everyone
Right.
else? Um, that would never
Yeah.
happen. You would literally be a party of one,
Yep.
because you wouldn't be able to have group activity. But no, you definitely can go into magic
Mhm.
not know. And when I say not knowing everything, I don't mean not
Mhm.
knowing everything that there
Mhm.
is to know about all magic and every traditions.
Mhm.
I'm talking about,
Yeah.
whatever tradition you're working in,
Yeah.
or, culture or whatever. Um, that's not what magic is. Like, when you're in a group setting and you have, say, an adept or a high priest
Yes.
or a high priest, or whatever,
Mhm.
they're the ones that, and you're less experienced, they're the ones with the experience and the knowledge,
Yes.
and that's why you're there.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
part of the reason why you're there, is to have the experience with people that are more knowledgeable.
Oh, completely.
you know,
Yeah,
and have the theory
completely.
and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, because you'll drive yourself mad, right? This is
Yeah.
what my experience was, right? I wanted to know it all. I want to get a good base so that and this is a really big thing for me. When I first started attending Mythwood events, suddenly I was surrounded by people who like me, who I could hold conversations with, but who were that much more advanced than me.
Right.
And so I was suddenly like not the one who was knowledgeable. And that threw me into an existential crisis, right?
Right.
So what did I do? And I became the bibliophile. I went and tried to read up on everything so that, I would appear like I knew what I was talking about.
Right. 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 Yeah.
And even when I was a teenager, that was the same thing. Like the people who I met on Witchfox, the group of guys, to me, they were that much more advanced than me. And so I wanted to be there.
Yeah.
Right. And so that really pushed me forward, but it drove me insane because no matter, and I mean, like I can understand why those alchemists drove themselves mad, why those, medieval grimoire writers, magicians went insane, because the more you go to that fountain, the more there is to drink, right?
Mhm.
And eventually you just have to stop and you have to say, okay, I am not interested in doing this, like ceremonial work is not something I'm interested in.
Okay.
Sigil work I am.
Yeah.
Talisman work I am very interested in, but when it comes to conjuration and whatnot, I'll go to a reader to do that, or I'll go to, I'll go to someone like you to conjure for me and then get that information. I don't need to. And the amount of weight that was taken off my shoulders when I finally got to that place, then I realized, okay, I'm living my magic now, because I know then I don't need to be everything,
Yeah. But I mean, even in, like if you have the presence of mind to know that, oh, I don't need to be proficient in every single magical discipline. I'm more sigils and talismans. Even then you can get stuck in the trap of, I need to know the theory, theory on sigil magic and talismanic magic from every tradition, from every culture, and still drive yourself crazy.
Completely and utterly. Oh yeah, completely and utterly.
So I mean, even within that, like if you have the presence of mind to know what you want to focus on, you still need the presence of mind to know what theory or what style or what tradition you want to focus on, because if your goal is to know everything about everything, you're just gonna absolutely drive yourself crazy. And it's nice, just like when I was saying to you during your podcast episode how great it was for a change to not be in the driver's seat, because I'm used to being in the driver's seat in podcasts as a host. It's the same thing with magic or ritual. When you realize there's so much freedom when you acknowledge that you don't know everything, that there are more experienced people out there, because it gives you an opportunity to, like, I lead all of my group rituals, and it's so nice when I get to do a ritual where I'm whether an active participant or a passive participant, but not the lead ritualist, not the director, because I get to immerse myself more fully in the ritual, because I get to focus on just the ritual, just the magic, as opposed to the directing and the stage directing, and you know what I mean?
No, I do.
So the sooner you learn, or the sooner you accept that you don't know everything and you can't know everything, the more free you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to that point, I eventually I discovered this for myself. I eventually understood that the more time I spent researching, the more time I spent in books was less time I was doing something. Right. And there is something about that lived experience. Again, I keep coming back to that lived experience and embodying it. But there's something about the experiential knowledge that really then will allow you to understand when theory is good and great and wonderful and applicable, and when it's just words on the page, right?
And you know, and in certain things, I mean, again, if we're talking about sigil magic, talismanic magic, more theory is fine, but when you're talking about working with nature, connecting with nature, the elements, whatnot, I mean, you can read about that from
until the cows come, right?
But unless you're going outside and immersing yourself in nature, you're not gaining anything.
Totally. That's really it. Another big part of my, and I'll introduce it now, another big part of my kind of my approach lately has been ancestral work. And I've actually written a book about it, and it's off to publishers. Hopefully I can tell you more about that in another future episode. I won't say too much about that now.
Well, that's exciting.
But I found that with my relationship with ancestral work, the more you do, right, it's about doing, it's about living. It's not about thinking, and it's not about kind of staying with the cerebral, right? And when you look at most traditions around the world, whether magic, whether spiritual, somewhere in between, the emphasis is always on orthopraxy. It's about the doing. It's about the correct doing, right? It's not, you can believe whatever you want about what you're doing, but when it comes to the actual lived practice, that has more importance, right? And
absolutely. I mean, this is magic. I mean, magic is a hands-on experience. I think the thing that we're lacking, though, is the cultural experience of magic. We don't exist in a culture where magic is a part of that culture, so you don't even have like a passive understanding of magic, because you didn't grow up in traditions that did ancestor work or practical magic or anything. So we have to turn to books, and one can almost get the impression that we're almost poo-pooing books, and that's not what we're doing.
No.
It's what we're poo-pooing is just reading books, because if you're just reading books on magic and not doing magic, you're not a magician. And you know, I don't like the term. A lot of people like to throw around the term an armchair occultist. I don't really like that term unless you're claiming to be an occultist, magician, witch, whatever, but you don't practice anything and you just read about it. Then that sort of condescending term, I get why people would use something a little condescending towards you, but it's almost like you're a amateur academic. Academics are praised for all of their hard work researching X subject that they have no lived experience of. You know, like academics that write on magic and research magic and spirituality and whatever stuff like that, but don't practice it. But yet they're praised for their in-depth work and their hard work and all the research that went into it. Well, they're praised because they have letters after their name, and they're praised because they spent way too much money on student loans that they'll never be able to pay off. But the amateur, air quote, academic is, oh, they're just an armchair occultist and we look down on them because we're better than them because we're the practicing occultists, you know? So I mean, if you want to be an amateur academic on the occult, knock yourself out. Don't call yourself an occultist or a witch or magician if you're not actually doing the work. Yes, and for people that want to do the work, yeah, read books. We're not saying don't read books, but you need to read.
Yeah, I don't think like
You do
I
work.
don't yeah, that's the thing. I don't think you can ever take books out of the Western tradition and all of those connected traditions. You can't, right? So much of the way that our Western culture kind of privileges information is through the written word. What I'm interested in is how how that literary culture is on the decline, and it is on the decline when you look at the rise of traditions, when you look at the rise of kind of that practical magic, right? You see a lot more focus on experiential knowledge and wisdom, experiential ritual, learning by apprenticeship. Yeah. Which I think is one of the best ways, because it's such a traditional kind of unifying thing from all over the world. Most cultures, even literate cultures, will have still that apprenticeship piece.
I think magic hasn't survived through the centuries thanks to traditions and magical orders. Magic has survived through the centuries from that teacher to student relationship, and not teacher to students, teacher to student.
No, it's completely true. Yeah, it's completely true. And I mean, there's like, not to drag psychology into this, but let's drag psychology into this. There is when you really look at the way that magic operates in many cultures around the world, there is a spooky similarity, and it's tied directly to how our minds are constructed, right? How our neural pathways and how our perceptions and how our associations. So magic is bound to pop up in most cultures in a similar way, because it's how we experience the world, right?
Right.
So and that is what I'm really interested in when it comes to the psychology of magic and psychology of kind of ritual work and whatnot. Not so much trying to understand it from like an anthropological point of view. I think that's important. But when it comes to harnessing those life hacks, right? And that's what I love about Jan Friese's books, and to some degree, some of the kind of chaos magic approaches. But then I would also preface that by saying that, you know, chaos magic looks great on paper, but just like communism, it looks great on paper. But I don't know many people who, you know, and please don't come after me. I'm just making an opinion here.
Yeah.
But there's certain, it's almost like the difference between kind of morphine and heroin, right? So the more you go down that psychological way, the less those kind of organic cultural components that are going to keep you safe when it comes to magic are taken away. And suddenly you'll be tripping out and high on this really intense energetic work that you're doing without any of the kind of the organic safeguards in place, you know? It's a whole conversation in itself.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know. Yeah, I don't know where we kind of got lost in the conversation.
That's what this podcast is for. it's you know, we just take the conversation where it goes. I don't think, what were we specifically talking? Yeah, no, it doesn't really matter. You know, basically we were talking about Mythwood and your experiences. Too much theory, not enough practice, and then Mythwood, blah blah blah, and how that all, you know, changed you and whatnot. That one book, the Jan Fries book, what was it called?
It's called Visual Magic.
Visual Magic. That's it. You mentioned it twice. So
you know where it is now.
Well, first of all, like, that's the only book that you really mentioned. Like, you mentioned a few in passing, just as almost a side.
So there's been many more. There definitely have been many more since then, but that was really the first book that kind of made it kind of accessible to me, because when I was reading, you know.
So when you look back on that book, does it still hold up for you? Is this
Yes
a
and
book where
no.
is this a book where you'd be like, you know what, like to a newbie, now that you have, you know, your years under your belt,
Mm-hmm.
is this a book that you're like, you know what, this book did me a lot of good, I'm going to recommend it to you, or
Oh yeah, and I have done. I
Mm,
have done. I think that it has a lot within it that it has a lot within it exercise wise, approach wise, mindset wise that can be applied to many of the multiple traditions of magic.
right,
Um, now I'm very eclectic. When I was out exploring, I looked into hoodoo, connected with people. That's originally how I connected with the ATR community, the African traditional community. I looked into hoodoo, I looked into, like grimoire magic, I looked into all these different things, right?
mhm,
And I found that there was that commonality of embodying. That really is what it is.
yeah,
In that book, he talks a great deal about how to make sigil work when you're brushing your teeth in front of the mirror and you've
right,
got the mirror is filled with steam. Put a sigil on that steam, right? How do you bring it on your kitchen fridge, right? How do you make it less about kind of the meaninglessness of ritual, because ritual can become meaningless if you aren't connected with it and you're not
right,
embodying it and you're not in it. And I know you know what I'm saying because you spend so much time in a ritual, right?
yeah,
Yeah. It isn't just about meaningless actions. It's about that relationship between the intent and the action and the meaning that you ascribe to it. The meaning is really the glue that binds all that together.
yeah,
So when you get that, you can perform magic anywhere.
right. No,
Right?
and it's true, and
Mhm.
it's absolutely true. And once you experience that for the first time, then you can look, well, you can look back to previous
Mhm.
stuff you've done, but also, you know, moving on into the future,
Mhm.
when you're doing ritual and it is just meaningless gestures because you're not putting anything into it,
Yeah,
and it's one of those moments where you're basically just play acting.
exactly.
You're not putting anything into it, you're not putting yourself into it, you're doing it just because it's become
This
a part of your routine, you
this
know.
is the thing. Yeah, this
Yeah,
is the thing, and this is why so many of those early witchcraft books and I mean, I love Damien Eccles. I really, really appreciate everything he said, but his first book is like that as well. I find that it's great material. It's got the material in there, but if you're picking that book up as, say, a kid from Tennessee or whatever, right? And you're not understanding that there is meaning and consequences to those actions in that book, and you're just doing it without that, divorced of that meaning,
mhm,
then nothing's going to happen.
yeah, or very little.
Oh, very little, I should say. Yeah, I shouldn't talk about like traditions I'm not part of, but like as an outsider looking in, very little would happen, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's but I do recommend that book. There's certainly been books after that. One
like
of the
like what?
one of the books that have really impacted me lately. I'll see if it's in my little book here. So I came across, now she is actually an atheist. She is a skeptic. She does not believe in magic. But this goes back to what we were saying about that kind of anthropological understanding of why magic works.
Mhm.
Her name is Lynn Kelly, and she has done a great deal of work on trying to understand ritual in traditional cultures and what the purpose of that ritual was. And she came to understand that what was happening was ritual was being used as a memory system. So there's this ancient way called the memory of Loki, which is kind of harnessing how our minds work with landscape. And so this kind of goes with my Druid work too. When you think about your geographic location, you're ascribing meaning and memories to those meanings, to that landscape. So when you walk around your house, you'll see objects in your space that will remind you of particular parts of your life, particular people, whatever it is, right? And so you can walk through your house and see your life laid out.
Right.
What she's saying is when, and she's worked a great deal with Indigenous elders all across the world, that same process of kind of mentally ascribing information to visual cues was used as a memory system to maintain vast amounts of information through the kind of the ritual that they would do. They
Right.
could walk their landscape and know that, you know, in each little place of their landscape, they could go to that space and the memorized information would come back for them because it was by association. So when I started to delve into her work, and it's very theoretical, yes, but it has a practical application here, I understood that what we do in magic ritual is not just, you know, wave our arms around and whatnot. We're actually recreating a landscape in our ritual spaces that is evoking the kind of the spirit or the information of that spirit and enlivening it, right? So and religions do this all over the world. Every single religion which has a pilgrimage route, this is the process.
Right.
She uses the example of the Australian Aborigines and their song lines. So their information system, which houses information from like 60,000 years ago, right, is encoded in rituals and stories and myths about ancestral characters who embody that information. And so when they perform these rituals, they not only teach these stories and this information to the younger generation, but they enliven it. They step into the space and it becomes a shared space with those figures. The same way that when you perform a ceremonial ritual connected with the angels or with the goetic spirits or whatever, you're evoking that spirit, enlivening them to come into that shared space with you. But it's through the ritual, and that's why the ritual is so important to get it right. Right? I feel like I've just gone blah, 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 blah. But
no, that was fantastic. What's the name of that book?
So she's got several. Her name is Lynn Kelly. This is Memorycraft.
Memorycraft.
And what I love about this is that when I read this, I totally then understood what talismans were. Because what talismans do is that whether it be, you know, high ceremonial talismans using sigils, or if it be a simple amulet, is that it becomes a touchstone. And so when you say to somebody, this amulet is for love, and they hold it in their hands, they're holding love in their hands, then suddenly they're enlivening it and love is in part of their life, right? It becomes magical because of the meaning we ascribe to it, and the meaning makes it magical. It's that kind of circular process. Yeah. So love it. And so that's like that I absolutely love. And that's come a lot into my psychotherapy work lately too.
Okay.
Tons of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. It's where that's the importance when it comes to reading books, the importance of not just sticking with pagan authors or witchcraft authors or magician authors. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's the thing when you look at the classical magicians and you look at the, you know, the John Dee, Agrippa, Michael Scottus, all of these people, right? Most of them were polymaths. They weren't just looking at magic. They were looking at magic and astrology and the natural sciences and geography and, you know, all of these things. And they all were connected together. There was no separation. Whereas nowadays I find that when you open a book on magic written by whoever, who knows, somebody online, right? Somebody online. And they just focus on those little things. The connecting intersections are not there. And that makes me bored. It makes me bored, you know? Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's when you're writing, you know, about magic and something, you know, very specific, you know, you're not going to have an all-encompassing book. What is an all-encompassing book on magic?
Yeah,
You
that's the
can
thing.
also ask, but you know, so it's fine. I find that because you know most authors on magic aren't multidisciplinary, that despite their best efforts, there's so many holes and gaps that they just can't fill.
Oh, totally.
The reader can't fill until they explore a wider world of knowledge, you know, because it's because practicing magic isn't just about learning magic,
Mhm.
you know, like there's so much more.
It grows with you, right? It grows with you. If I had tried to tell my younger self what I just said to you when I was 15, I wouldn't have gotten it. You know, because I wasn't there, right? If I had tried to tell my younger self about embodying in a time when I wasn't even comfortable in my own body because of my sexuality, I wouldn't have been able to get it. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, it grows with you. And I think that's what I appreciate about quite a few of the people I met in Mythwood, was that many of them had been practicing for so long, and yet they never let it get to their head, right? They understood that you know, who they were in the 1980s at Starwood in the States was very different from who they are now presently. But you know, their life now is still as filled with magic. It's just in a different way, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I sometimes think back rather nostalgically on my teenage years when I was first discovering magic and witchcraft and paganism. And my life seemed so magical and full of magic, and the solution to every problem was run to my book searching for a spell.
Right.
And it's funny because I think, you know, there was that sense of newness, sense of wonder, and the inhibitions of youth to, you know, you're not so much questioning and you know, thinking about theory and reason and logic and blah 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 blah. And I have to stop myself a lot because as an adult, when I look back with a sense of nostalgia on those times, I have to stop and be like, Sean, you just did 3 hours of ritual every day for the past 3 weeks. When you're not doing personal ritual, you're in your ritual room making magical products in a ritual process. Sean, all your life is magic.
That's the thing.
You know, it's just, it's different. I'm different, you know, and there's certainly a lot less spontaneity about my magic now. But it's not less magical. It's just different, you know.
Completely.
And of course my magic's different because I'm a completely different person, because right now I'm 42. We're talking about me when I was 14. Those are obviously two very different people, but also too, I had one initiatory experience that changed me so dramatically that you know, the adult Sean before that and the adult Sean after that are different enough that I don't even think they would get along. If they were two different people existing in the same space, I don't think they would actually get along, to be honest.
How beautiful is that, right? How beautiful is that? You know,
I feel fortunate for two reasons. Reason number one, that pre-initiatory experience, Sean wasn't as good a person as I thought I was at the time. And two, even people that experience initiation don't necessarily have that, that full initiatory experience. There's a difference between initiation and an initiatory ritual.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. If there isn't a death component, then it hasn't been an initiation, right?
Yeah. And I mean, with, initiation rituals have two components. They have that signifier that you've gone from here to here, almost like a formality, pomp and ceremony of recognizing, that you've completed this and you're moving on to that, which is fine. There's certainly a place for that, but that initiation, within that initiation ritual, there should be some change. It may not be massively dramatic in that moment, but there should be some change there. But an initiation ritual should initiate the process. Like when you're finished your initiation ritual, I don't care what tradition you're in, you're not done. Like it's
it's just starting.
It's just starting. And for me, it wasn't through ritual, an initiation ritual, that I experienced this. I was working through the bardic grade with Obod. And I can't remember. I was having a conversation about this with who on my podcast. I can't remember.
Was it Michelle Boulanger? I think you spoke about it.
Well, I've mentioned this a couple of times, but I was... Yeah. Who was I talking to? Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I was trying to remember where in the bardic grade there was a certain set of gwers that I when I did them the first time, like the exercises, the experience was so profound.
Right.
And so I just kept repeating these exercises. I think I was in the water. I think they're in the water. It could have been earth. It would have been earth or water. And I have a feeling it's around like words like 38 or something like that. So yeah, it would have been earth or water, but I can't remember. And I was having such profound experiences and starting to really learn things about myself. Like those things that tend to be like deep down and hidden and locked away and whatnot.
Yes.
And I was going through my natural healthcare practitioner's certification program at the Transformational Arts College.
Oh, nice. So, I didn't know you went to Transformational Arts too.
Yeah, so, Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Lux Files. I'm not just the host of this podcast, I'm also the owner of Lelo Gonzalez. I make beeswax and scented spell candles, loose stick and liquid incense, anointing oils, and bath salts. So once you're done listening to this episode, why don't you head on over to my website at www.lelogonzalez.com and check out my products. For your convenience, the link to the website is also in the show notes. Oh, I'm doing that, I'm immersed in that whole holistic, energetic experience of that training course. I'm, with my Druid Grove. I'm, formally joined OBOD and going through the training. So, I mean, I was pretty immersed in it.
And when was this? How long ago was this?
This would have been in 2007, I believe. Okay. I joined OBOD in 2006. Yeah, it would have been 2007 because I moved to Texas in June of 2008. So, or was it 2006? It was around there. Oh, I don't know, 2006, 2007. So, it's
Sometime around there. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
been a while. Um, and this initiatory experience just spontaneously happened one day.
Wow.
And I remember it like it just happened yesterday. So yeah, so I mean, they don't just happen in written,
No,
you know.
no.
Like,
Initiation.
there's
Yeah.
certainly, there's certainly a process like uh almost, you can maybe call it like a ritual process.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just yeah.
Yeah, I feel you on that. As you were talking, I was kind of contemplating those moments of big transition change for me, and
Okay,
not all of.
hold that thought for
Okay,
a second. I'm going to pause because when
okay,
we had that break between your podcast and my podcast, I tried to get my dogs out for a pee. They
okay,
didn't want to go. So I'm gonna put them out now. So I'm just gonna be a few
okay,
minutes. So I'm just gonna
okay,
hit pause
okay.
and then we'll be right back.
There we
And
go.
we're back. So you were just gonna, I think, share a transformative.
Yeah, well, I wanted to pick up on that point about kind of, just looking around and realizing that your life is magic, right? That piece about initiation, I think, is important, especially in realizing that it's not a singular event. You're completely right. It is that initiation. It's initiating a process. And for me, there was no singular kind of initiation event that caused so much change in my life. But in retrospect, looking back, getting to a point now where I can see that my life is magic, and I do. I embody my life. My life is magic, and that realizing that has been definitely being impacted by some of the people in my life, definitely. But it's in particular, it was 1 year where everything just kind of changed. I went through a period where 7 individuals came back into my life in 2016 through bizarre means, like absolutely incredibly bizarre situations. And I'm still like reeling about it even now. And the very last person that came back into my life was a former best friend of mine, somebody who I had fallen in love with, somebody who was my best friend in university, and somebody who there was a split in our relationship, and it hurt. It just hurt to have him out of my life, right? And he came back into my relationship and into my life, and we've developed a friendship again. But each time it was like, oh, for fuck's sakes, like really? I'll give you an example. So it was 2016. I was in Kitchener here, and I was staying in a motel, and I went on to Grindr. And for those who don't know what Grindr is, it's a social dating app, and
It's
we'll
not
call
a
it.
dating app.
Yeah. So somebody messaged me on there, and they don't have a Facebook, and normally I don't even bother with those, but I was like, you know what, I'm bored, why not? So I started chatting to him, and it turned out he was he was interested in the psychic fair and all that. But anyways, we just continued chatting, right? Nothing really happened. And about 2 months later, I invited him up for a coffee, and I saw him, and I was like, wait, you look really familiar. And it turned out it was somebody who I had slept with when I was 18 in college and university, like 10 years before, right? And it turns out that he had always like held a big crush for me, and it had been a big like issue for his life. He didn't even realize it was me, right? And so in that event, he had a lot to kind of unload, and it was something I needed to hear. And that happened 7 more times. Like people just came back into my life, people who were either needed to tell me something, or who I was holding like a lot onto, right? And needed to let go of. And by the end of the year, it was pretty much the message of the universe, like, don't live in the past, you don't belong there, right? And up until that point, I'd been realizing I'd been really holding onto the past and living in the past, not stepping into my present. And that's when I knew that magic was happening in my life all the time. I was just unaware of it. By about the fourth person, and like it was bizarre. Like some of this was just absolutely bizarre. How they would show up. Like one person, I met them on subway, just randomly. Like,
Right.
What are the chances, right? But I started to get a feeling when something was about to happen. I would get a feeling in my gut, like weird little patterns would start, little synchronicities, little, things like that. And then I would know that something was just about to happen, and it did.
Yeah.
And that is something I still live with even now. I still have that part of my life now. Yeah. But the change that came out of that, to be able to step into the new me, the person I was becoming. But I don't know if that would have necessarily initiated if I hadn't, started to work what I had worked the previous year.
Yeah. Now, when did you join? I know this. I just don't remember. But I mean, even if I did remember, it's a good subject for the podcast anyways. But when did you join OBOD?
Absolutely. So it's 2018, I think. No, 2017. End of 2017.
Yeah, because I know it was after you and I met the first time,
Yes.
which was Occultism 2017, and that was September. So I know it was after that. I just couldn't remember if it was 2018 or 2017.
Yeah, it was like late 2017, early 2018.
Yeah. What grade are you in now?
I'm still on Bardic.
Okay.
Yeah, I found this is the thing, and I was talking to David Bard about this. Yeah, I had him on my podcast, and I was talking to him after the show, and I was saying how I'm still on Bardic grade, and he said that's totally normal, right? People meet the material where they're at in their life, and if it's not compatible with that time in their life, then it won't get done. There are people who are like 20 years and they're still on Bardic grade.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, OBOD, just for the listeners, OBOD has the 3 grades, Bard, then Ovate, then Druid. And they have the courses set up where you get your GWRs every month. And they have it set up so that you can do each grade within a year. And I don't think there are many people that go through all 3 grades, within 3 years. I remember when I was really active on the Druid Heads Pub forum, which was the forum. Technically, it wasn't OBODs, but it was, connected to OBOD. And, some people, and they were always Americans, that like to the day, oh, I'm done Bardic, oh, I'm done Ovate, oh, I'm done Druid. And, I always kind of was like, really?
Yeah.
Really? But I mean, whatever, teach their own. I think someday I'll do Druid grade. Maybe just to finally, technically complete it. I don't know. I joined OBOD, well, definitely for the fellowship. I mean, I had been eyeing OBOD for years, and then when I met first Gail, who I had her on my podcast 2 podcasts ago, Gail Yoga. I met her through me joining the Fellowship of Isis, and I can't remember how the conversation went, but I probably would have mentioned OBOD, or she mentioned OBOD, and actually no, I would have mentioned OBOD because I remember my reaction was just like, oh, I'm a member of OBOD. And I'm like, oh my God. And then she was telling me about their grove and blah, 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 blah. So I started.
Is she part of the Mystic Rivers Grove with Sarah out in Boston area?
No. So this was when I was living in Toronto.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So this predates my move to Texas. So I was living in Toronto at the time, and I joined the Fellowship of Ice. Okay, well, so the reason why I joined OBOD was for the Fellowship, because I'm now doing, the 8 Sabbats. We're going out to well, not in Mount Forest, but 2 members. They had originally was an 8. They bought an 8-acre property, but then they bought the house next door to them as well. So now they had 100 acres. Beautiful, beautiful. Oh God. If you are any form of pagan, this 100-acre property would be your dream property, because it's all surrounded by farmland, but there's this 100 acres that is, well, there's a bit of alfalfa growing.
Oh, wonderful.
Otherwise, it is 100% unsuitable for any type of farming.
Right.
And when they sold off the second property, they wanted to split it 50 acres, and they couldn't, because this 100 acres surrounded by farmland is a area of natural and scientific.
So they can't. They have to keep it one. Yeah.
So while they were able to split it 80-20, one of the reasons why it has this designation is it's the God, what were the snakes called? Massasauga rattlers. The most northern part where they've been found.
Wow, on that property.
On that property.
Wow.
So it's a beautiful property. There's a couple of ponds, this big bowl shape in the ground behind the house where we do all our rituals, and then it's hill, and then there's forest and ravine.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
And I mean, it's perfect. It's perfect. So it was definitely the Fellowship that I joined, but I joined for the Bardic grade because I was looking for that alchemical that alchemical work through the elements, that inner work, that change, that you go through. And I just couldn't find it anywhere else. I had joined a gardening coven and it wasn't giving me what I was looking for. I joined the Fellowship of Isis and it wasn't giving me what I was looking for, like that personal alchemy, that transformation, that dramatic change. And regardless of the tradition or whatever, all these training programs, they're all similar, like in the Western esoteric tradition, working through the elements, in a similar way. There's differences, of course, and it's not that just because every tradition is copying off of every other tradition and making changes. It's just it's part of the Western esoteric tradition. And something about OBOD and Druidry was calling me, and I'm like, okay, this is it. And then I met Gail, and I'm a member of OBOD. Then I met the Grove, and we're sellable. So, the reason why I joined OBOD was for the Bardic grade, it wasn't like, I'm going to go through the 3 grades. I'm going to be Druid grade, and I'm a Druid leader. It wasn't anything about that. It was for that alchemical transformation that I was looking for, and which I got. And having that spontaneous initiatory experience that I was telling you about. So so I got what I went to OBOD for. What what I mean? Just in the Bardic grade. And so it's not like you have to go through all 3 grades. And you don't have to rush through all 3 grades even, but they're not even set up like they're 3 separate grades because they're 3 separate
Functions.
Yeah, functions and the training is different in all three grades, but it's not set up like a hierarchy where Ovate is above Bard and Druid is above
That's the thing,
Faith
right?
and Bard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I have noticed that quite a few people who are coming in, specifically Americans, and I know why that is, and I know why that is because it's cultural, partly it's because of the sheer distance between all the various groves in the States. You know, in the UK, everyone's so much closer together that, you know, everybody gets together, right? But yeah, that hierarchy piece is certainly an interesting kind of cross pond kind of issue, but it isn't that, right? It is really each function is very different. With me, I'm finding that because storytelling and the power of story and the kind of the relationship between kind of the recipient and the teller of stories is such a big part of my life right now. It's a big part of my magic. It's a big part of my psychotherapeutic work. It's a big part of my personal work. That I'm very comfortable in sitting and exploring and dwelling in that bardic role right now. And it's something that there's so many mysteries in that one grade that if I were to then think to skip ahead to the next one and you know, really immerse myself in Ovate, which is a lot more about community service around putting yourself into those places of service to others and service to self and service to everything around. I don't know if I would, I feel like I would still have a lot of work left to do in the bardic grade, even though I've done the material, right?
Yeah.
It's about embodying it, you know.
Yeah, and you know, that's a thing, because with the change that I experienced because of the bardic grade led me to, you know, and the also, like I said, you know, I was doing that holistic program at the time too. So you have the ovate stuff. I was already living. You know, the community service and the leadership through ritual that you find in the Druid grade. I got to naturally, you know what I mean? Because, you know, the thing about the OBA course in particular is it's such a natural progression and transformation, almost logically so. And so I'm at the point now, like I would do the Druid grade just for the formality of getting, you know, the certificate, quote unquote, the title, you know what I mean? The need and the need for that just lessens as the years go by, you know, that validation, you know, or that authenticity, you know.
Well, because you're already serving the responsibilities, right? You're already fulfilling those responsibilities that will come with that. Because I find, like, with titles anywhere, right? It doesn't matter what tradition, it doesn't matter what it is. You know, the immature mind would look at those titles and be like, that's where I want to be. When in reality, it's more of just a calling card for the responsibilities that connects with that title, right? And so when, like, what strikes me about what you were talking about in the podcast, like my podcast episode, you were talking about stepping into that role with your drag of, you know, fundraising, of assisting and doing charity work and stepping into that leadership role through that. But it isn't leadership role for the sake of leadership. It's really the responsibility. And people who are not prepared to step into that responsibility, the title becomes meaningless, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing you realize too is that true leadership is more about service than it is about ordering people about, because the more I step into a leadership role, the more heavy lifting and grunt work that I do. Like in whether it's in ritual,
Yeah.
you know, the magical, the magical aspect of my life, or the mundane aspect of my life. True leadership, you're you're not at the top, you're not at the pinnacle, you're at the bottom, you're the foundation, you're the one that has everyone else on your shoulders. That's true leadership.
Absolutely.
And and so many people, I think, come into the pagan world, occult world, however you want to define it, looking for high titles, to fulfill um, an ego need.
Yeah.
And hopefully those people through the work transform, but a lot don't.
Yes.
And then you get a lot of very culty behavior.
Yeah.
And I'm also torn too, because you get some people, some really questionable personalities that are hard to deal with, that can be disruptive, potentially threatening or dangerous. And I mean, you have to you have to take care of them. Like you have to remove them from your space.
You have to put up boundaries.
Yeah.
You have to put up boundaries. Yeah.
But I'm torn though, because those are the people that end up becoming the EA Quetings of the world, and starting their,
their little personality cults. Yeah.
Yeah. And which leads to, followers murdering women as sacrifices to, the devil.
Yeah.
So you can't have them around, but you want to see them transform in a positive way, but they're not going to do that on their own. You're just, you're just, you're stuck. I mean, you have to step back and say, as much as your role, in this magical community, there's so much more to being in this magical community than just doing magic. I think a lot of it is helping people, and always starting from a place of love.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about, love and light and fairy glitter and woo, woo, woo. I just say, you start from a place of love, as opposed to hate or apathy or disinterest. But you just can't help everybody. You can't save everybody. And we know this. And, logically, we know this. Rationally, we know this. But, in theory, but that's hard to put into practice. It's hard to give up on people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know I have to, but it doesn't make it any easier.
No. But that's that is your own stuff, right? Right. That's your own stuff, right? If we, and I feel the same way, because you come from that authentic place of self, right? Talking about personal alchemy here. When you get to that pure sense of self, which is altruistic and wanting to support others and all of that, it can be very difficult to, while coming from a place like that, see other people who are still very much egocentric and, working from their own egos and their own selfish needs and all of this. but it's a trap to want to save the whole world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It is a trap. You'll go insane.
Yeah.
You will go insane, right? Because it's never ending, right?
Yeah.
You know, while we're in these physical forms, we're not bodhisattvas, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. You see these like parents, for example, if you want to take it to a mundane level, parents that, you know, spend years trying to help their son or daughter who's suffering through addiction and emptying their bank accounts to put them in treatment facilities and, you know, taking out a second mortgage on the house, you know, just really sacrificing their dream, their retirement, their comfort and security to help their kids, and finally cutting the cord and just letting their kids go. And on the outside, you know, and I mean, we love as a species, we love to judge other people. How could you do that? They're your son. How could you do that?
Yeah.
They're your daughter. What kind of parent are you? The kind of parent that has dealt with this for 10 years unsuccessfully.
Yeah.
It's so easy to judge when you're not in that experience. And it's hard to say, but sometimes you just gotta let go.
It's a kindness, right? This is the thing. And I'm remembering a conversation with my godfather, who is a priest of Oshun. He's crowned Oshun, and he was telling me once that when he was having a reading done, the message coming from Oshun was sometimes the kindest thing is to let people smash against the wall.
Yeah.
If you have somebody who is so dead set on running and hurting themselves, the kindest thing you can do is let them hurt themselves, because then they're taking ownership of that. You try to hold them back, you're keeping them in a place of, it's a helicopter parents, right? You're keeping them in a place of infantilization, and that's not going to help them.
Yeah. And then, you know, I get into the, you know, the discussion of true will, not free will, true will, like in the magical sense. And do I, like, when do I step in? You know, I want to help this person that's on a, you know, negative self-destructive path, but who am I to say that they're not living their true will? You know, so when do you step in and help?
What does that even mean? What does stepping in to help look like? What's the effects? What's the intention? There's so many things, right? And there's so many pieces of that come from us, you know.
And well, the thing is that, you know, when you see someone hurting, someone in pain, and you want to help, part of that, there's a level of selfishness there, because I would feel better if you felt better.
Exactly.
You know, so I've kind of gotten to the point where I step back and say, you know, I'll always be willing to help, but only if I'm asked to, because otherwise I'm deciding what your true will is. I'm deciding what your path is.
Exactly.
You know,
and that's not our role.
Yeah. And then that makes me think, you know, I start going into these, you know, my thoughts just spin out of control. And then I'm thinking, okay, well then interventions, those I would never be able to take part in.
And they fail often.
They do fail often. But the person who, you know, the addict, isn't inviting everyone to an intervention.
Yeah.
They're being ambushed.
Yes.
So if I'm coming from that place of true will, then
Mm.
I couldn't take part in an intervention.
Mm.
Like morally or ethically, from my magical spiritual standpoint, I wouldn't be able to take part in an intervention because we're all deciding what's best for this person, not this person. You know what I mean? But then I just wrap back around. Oh, but what if this is their moment and this is their time? And
Mm.
you just start thinking
Completely.
in
No,
circles,
completely.
and you don't come up with an answer because you can't. There is no answer.
No. No,
There is
that's the lie of it, is that constantly looking for an answer, when the answer is very apparent, right? The answer is that that individual has had so many opportunities in their life where their will, their ability to step into ownership was taken away, right? Often addiction is connected to trauma, and often trauma is connected with some sort of an abuse situation or something external to themselves where their ability to feel empowered and in control of their life was taken away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so interventions often fail because what the addiction actually is a coping mechanism with whatever is underlying that. And then you get a bunch of people coming and trying to take that coping mechanism away.
Yeah.
It's an unhealthy coping mechanism, but for them, it's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
So what the work then, at least speaking psychotherapeutically here, is to look at what is the healing needing to be done underneath that addiction, so that then the addiction becomes useless to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and I mean that takes a lot of understanding, especially when you do feel all these things. You feel bad for them, you want to help them, all of this. Well, that's your stuff, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Because I would certainly feel a lot better to see this person that's in front of me in pain not be in pain. So I'm starting from a place of me, from a place of ego, because now I'm like, okay, well, I need to feel better and in this situation, and the only way to feel better in this situation is to make this other person feel better. And so I've decided everything in that moment for this person. I've decided what's best for them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not taking into consideration their true will, their needs, their, the lessons that they need to learn. So, so now it's more of it's a step back and, help when asked.
Yes, exactly. And that's to kind of tie this back to the idea of magic, right? The most powerful magic spell I have ever been taught, and it was by a Babalao friend who makes a huge amount of sense. He said, light a white candle and pray to whatever spirit you're working with that this person gets what they deserve.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if they deserve to be punished for whatever reason, they'll be punished. But if they don't deserve that, then they won't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that takes it. It's surrendering, right? It's surrendering to that higher power outside of ourselves, the will of the whole universe, whatever you want to call it, right? And then it's not petty.
Yeah.
Because so much, so much of magic in wanting to help becomes petty because it's locked into those kind of those feelings,
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable, so I want to be comfortable, so I want the world to change, blah,
exactly
blah, blah,
yeah. And by sort of by doing that process, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier in different contexts, but by you want to help this person, and it's certainly going to make you feel better, but true will, da 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 da. So, you know, you do like that little ritual that you suggested. You're surrendering, and that's freeing, and that feels good. That you're not doing, you're not definitely not coming from a place of ego, but it's serving the same purpose as that ego-driven, well, I know what's best for this person, so I'm going to help them so I can feel better. You know, so you get to that same place. They may not, but you do. And yeah, surrender, not always being in the driver's seat. It, you know, it can be so freeing and so healing, and it's a good, it can be a good place to be. Yeah, it almost sounds counterintuitive sometimes, but surrendering is a good place to be.
This is the thing, when you step into that place, right, when you are able to see your life in that magical way of looking at it, then the onus is taken away from constantly having to do spells to change the world around you, because then you don't see yourself as separate from the world around you. You're part of the world around you, right? I this past summer I went down to my tattooist down in London, and I finally got one that I have wanted for a while, and I got this tattooed onto me. Oh, there we go, you can see it. It's the bind rune of weird.
Okay.
That interconnection of everything, right? When you look at like the Anglo-Saxon concept of weird, that idea of fate, it's so different from kind of the fate that came down to us from like even from Hermetic, right? It is that idea of interconnection. It is that idea that, you know, no matter, you know, you think that you're separate, and so you do all this magic, blah 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 blah, whatever, right, to change the world around you, when in reality, when you begin to see your interconnection with the world around you, you can then perform magic in subtle ways to affect bigger things, right? Yeah, absolutely. That's what true magic is.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it doesn't need to be this grand ritual. It doesn't need to be this big, huge, long 30-day thing. It can be very subtle. It can be a little whisper here in order to hopefully affect, you know, over here, right?
Yeah. One thing that you know, the idea of letting go that I've gotten somewhat good at is you know, the whole political landscape, what's going on in the US right now. And you know, it would just like infuriate me and frustrate me and be like, I'm in Canada, I'm a Canadian citizen. There's nothing, I can't vote anyone out. I can't recall anyone. There's nothing I can do about America. Americans have got to take care of America. I certainly can't do it. I just got to let go. And once I started thinking in and I mean, it's hard because it seems every week there's something else. You know, like the newest thing, the Texas's abortion ban. And so like my blood is boiling, and it's like, remember, Sean, this isn't your country. You can't, nothing you can say or do is going to change it. Whatever you tweet isn't going to change it. Stop. You have your own country to worry about, and you know, the blood pressure just drops. You know, the blood pressure just drops. You just gotta surrender and let go. Those things.
It's about affecting what you like. It is about affecting what you can control. Which, when you really look at it and you really start to understand, is very little, right? And the weight that can be taken off of that. But that doesn't mean that you then have to give up. Doesn't mean that you can't relate to the person in front of you from that place of loving kindness and that place of interconnection and all of that, you know. But it also doesn't mean that you have to then spend so much time fixating on something that is so much bigger than you.
Exactly. And you know, I have I understand the political nature of the occult community. I mean, you know, the occult magic has always been subversive and political. Um,
Mhm.
you may not like that reality, but that's a reality. You know, see a lot of people commenting on, you know, on Twitter, on, you know, especially like pagan authors and witchcraft authors, and they'll post something political, and someone's like, "Oh,
Hey, yo.
you should just tweet about your books and not about politics, or else I'm gonna unfollow you." Like, and they're all
We'll
like,
do it.
"Then unfollow me." You
Yeah,
know, like
yeah.
witchcraft is political. It always has been.
Completely.
You just because you deny that doesn't change reality or history.
No.
So, you know, I get that the occult has always been political, um, and we've always done things for change. So I'm not saying that that's not valid, but
Mm.
you know, the whole like bind Trump movement and stuff like that, like
Mm.
he's so far outside your sphere of influence.
Yeah.
Um, and you're focusing on and you're focusing on the wrong thing. I mean,
Mm.
Trump was a symptom. He wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
You know, the problem was the people that are within your sphere of influence.
Yeah.
You know, because Trump didn't elect Trump.
Mm.
It's the people that elected Trump. So if you don't want that Trumpy type of politics
Mm.
in your country, and you want to do magic
Mm.
or change,
Mhm.
then do magic on the people that are within your sphere of influence, the people around you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
Uh,
I do. I
I
think.
get the whole um like, oh, look at me, look what I'm doing on social media.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
get the likes, get the retweets, get the follower count up high. I get that.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, the Bind Trump movement, that was just a marketing um uh a marketing technique to sell a book
Yeah.
anyways. So I mean, I get that aspect as well. But if you
Mm.
genuinely wanna, you know, make change,
Mhm.
then you need to, just like you know, people say like all politics is local.
Yeah.
Well, your magic needs to be local as well,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I really struggle with that one myself. I get the intention behind it. I do.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that it is very indicative of how as a society, and like Canada and the United States, we're the same society, as much as we don't want to admit it. We are the same society, right? What happens down there affects us up here, right?
Yeah.
Um, what I think that is very indicative of is how people, and social media doesn't help, but
Mm.
how especially the younger generation cope with bigger issues, right? That interconnection piece is missing. You
Yeah.
know, that interconnection piece is really missing nowadays, I find.
Yeah.
And so to admit that something is far more complex than the figurehead, the symbol that you've ascribed all of this to, or that is kind of embodying all of those problems, there's power in that. But
Mhm.
if you lop off the head, the body is still there, and
Yeah.
like, you know, the hydra will still, you know, another head will come up, right? So it's very indicative of kind of how society is right now in general. You know,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter what kind of social issue is out there. But that doesn't negate the fact that magic and occultism and the pagan community, and however other communities you want to add onto that, there's embodied power in it, right? There's a reason why so many queer people are in these, you know, marginalized spiritual communities. So many queer people are suddenly taking up. Well, I mean, I don't even want to say suddenly. I think it's always been there. I think it's just now very open, and, you know,
It's
people are
just a
talking
lot
about
more
it.
visible. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just a lot
you
more
know.
visible. And I mean, you know, queer people have always been in this space, but not but completely underrepresented. I mean, we like to pretend, that the like, and I am going to separate, because normally I'll just like occult a community just as a umbrella term for pagan, witchcraft, whatever. But I do have to differentiate. The neo-pagan community likes to pretend that it's always been an inclusive space when it hasn't. Well, first of all, there's been a lot of like active exclusion, but inclusion isn't saying, oh yeah, you're queer, you can celebrate with us, even though nothing that we do or teach or believe
includes you.
Includes you.
Yeah.
So, but we fooled ourselves into believing that we were, the neo-pagan community is this, all-encompassing,
well, and that's the thing. If you look at it now, like, I mean, I know a lot of gay Gardnerians, and I know a lot, quite a few Alexandrians, but the spaces that seem to be the most popular right now, and even in the past like 20 years, think of the Radical Fairies, the Minoan Brotherhood, the newer ones coming up, like the Temple of Antinous, all of these things. Hoodoo is actually becoming the next big one for queer people. I'm seeing so many people on Facebook groups, on whatever, moving into those spaces. And even the deities and the figures, these marginalized figures, Hecate, Aphrodite, which makes total sense. But even the devil, I mean, the past 5 years, a huge number of queer, satanic, and devil worshipping groups, traditional witchcraft, have come up and been formed, and that always speaks to that liminal space. Whereas the Gardnerian, even Alexandrian, the twofold goddess or threefold goddess, and the binary doesn't work. And it's fascinating to see that liminality, right?
Do you find that your sexuality informs your practice at all?
Oh, that is a great conversation. I actually was having this conversation earlier with somebody. I'm still uncovering that question for myself. I think it does. I definitely think it does. I don't practice sex magic or anything like that, but being like, having my lived experience, and I'm going to guess the same with you, being in that liminal space, being in that outcast space, it couldn't have not affected my magic, right? But I do think that the more I age, the more I'm beginning to see that as a, what am I trying to say here? I see it as a paradigm that I see my world through, right? So, and I know you're on Cobod, the Queer Obod page. I've been, and I'm actually enjoying that a lot more than the main Obod Facebook group, I'll be honest with you. But I find that when I ask, because I've been asking quite a few questions like this on there, how do you relate to deity through your sexuality, or even gender identity, right? How do you, in what ways does magic kind of manifest through those things? I find that people have a vague sense and a knowing, but they don't want to talk about it, or they've never thought about it that way. So yeah, for me, I definitely like some of the spirits that I work with, some of the deities that I work with, the type of magic that I work with. My understanding of magic has definitely been affected by my lived experience. But I'm also a gay man in my middle 30s, living it up in the city, right? So kind of my experience of coming out, which was an initiation process, my experience of kind of finding that comfortable zone when it came to masculinity versus femininity, kind of just ripping down that binary for myself, has certainly affected my magic, because I don't see now magic as such a binary kind of sense. You know, it's a lot more interconnected. It's a lot more fractal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm just blah 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 blah.
No. It makes total sense. And yeah, this is a difficult topic, because I think what a lot of people do, and I'm not judging this. I'm just, this isn't my approach. Is okay, well, which gods are the queer gods, or the gender fluid gods? What mythology is queer, and working, you know, with those gods within that mythology, and which is fine. Like if that's how, like, if you need to see your sexuality in your gods and in mythology to have some sort of validity or acceptance, then fine. Like if that's what it takes, great. That's not what I do. But through my experience working with gods and spirits, I don't know, well, maybe polytheists, you know, would believe that like a female goddess is female, a male god is male. But I don't know if there's many of us that actually believe that, you know, X goddess is you know, female, and that's just like that. It's a hard fact, and you know, it's incontrovertible, and she can't change, evolve, adapt, you know, through the centuries, or just with my experience of her or him, as the case may be. But I find through like my experience, my personal experience, through my spirituality and my magic, is that the gods and spirits present themselves the way I need them to present themselves, even without me consciously realizing.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. I do.
Yeah. And, you know, as far as, you know, like we have this this obsession in the neo-pagan community, you know, with fertility, and, you know, the joint of male and female, blah 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 blah. I don't really resonate with that so much. I've worked within that mythology. It doesn't bother me as a gay person, you know, that you know, heteronormative sort of influence on neo-paganism doesn't offend me or bother me that much. But I just internalize that bonding of feminine and masculine, and really embrace both, you know, in more of a balance.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
So that's basically how I guess how my sexuality informs my practice. Like I said, I don't feel the need to go and search out queer mythology.
I hear you. Yeah.
Like to me, I mean, I've been out of the closet since I was 14 or 15. I mean, I've been out of the closet more than I was in the closet at this point in my life. So I just feel like that's attempting to validate queer
Yeah.
sexuality. You know what I mean?
I
Just
have
like
noticed.
when people like, oh, um, uh, Viking warriors would have male Viking warriors,
Mm,
the weaker one would be the bottom to take in the
mm,
strength and essence. That okay, that's fine, but that's not queer culture.
yeah, yeah,
Straight
yeah,
men
yeah,
going through this process,
yeah.
um, that's not queer
Mhm.
culture. Um, when people talk about men in drag in Tudor times,
Yeah,
they weren't in drag. It was
no,
illegal for women to be on stage.
this is the
Drag
thing. Yeah,
drag has nothing to do with the patriarchy.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Just because a man's in a dress doesn't make it drag. So it's uh there's uh in I can't remember what pharaoh's tomb, uh a painting of his hairstylist and manicurist, they're holding hands, they're gay lovers. Oh,
Mm,
ancient Egyptians, accepted homosexual. You don't know that. You
yeah,
don't know that, and you don't need that as
yeah.
validate your existence now. That was 4,000 years ago. This is now. I just find too many people are looking to the past for
Mm,
evidence of homosexuality
yeah,
in accepted form to say, see, we're
yeah,
valid.
yeah.
No,
That's a very
you're valid
human
because you're
trait.
alive. You're valid
No,
because you're
that's
alive. You're not valid
yeah.
because there's a painting
Mm,
of two Egyptian men
yeah.
4,000 years ago holding hands.
Oh,
You're
completely. Yeah,
valid because you're alive.
yeah. But that is a very human thing. Like it doesn't
Oh,
matter what kind of. Oh yeah, like
yeah.
the reach back for authenticity through history is a very human trait. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter kind of what area you look at. I did want to make a point. What you raised before about how people are running out and looking for queer deities to worship, and I think that's I of what I have seen, and I've experienced this myself to some degree, but of what I have seen. I think that's a stage along, like that's a phase along
Yeah.
the stages of owning your spirituality, right?
Yeah.
Some some of the very interesting folk that I've been connecting with lately, um, I ask them these questions, right? Because I'm particularly interested in queer spirituality for my practice because it is an area that for a lot of queer people, especially immigrants from Christianity or Islam or whatever it is, refugees, I should say. Spirituality can be a very dangerous place sometimes because of that past trauma.
Yeah.
I have noticed that the most interesting people to me are the people who they don't look to queer deities to validate themselves. They look to queer deities that represent their lived experience. So, for example, two deities that are very popular right now, that have been popular for, well, three deities, I should say, that have been popular for a long time. Hermes, Pan, and Dionysus. And so for me, I'm a huge fan of Hermes. Love him to bits, and for a long time, I really connected with him, his story, because I can see him in my life. I can see his energy, not so much his physicality, his energy in my life. That power of change of transaction. Transaction has been such a big part of my life.
Mhm.
I was talking to somebody who, well, two guys actually, very wonderful individuals, like really incredibly interesting individuals. They were talking about Dionysus and how when they're involved in orgies and they're involved in in the bathhouse, just going at it, having fun, and it's a bacchanalian feast, right?
Mhm.
They then see in that queer space Dionysus, and they see the energy behind that environment and that situation in him. And so when they're honoring him, they're honoring their lived experience. And I think for a lot of people, the idea of fertility, especially for for women who are going through pregnancy and who that's their lived experience, their bodies are producing. So the danger with that is when that becomes dogma, and that's why Wicca has become so dogmatic when it comes to that. Is it's typecasting human experience into only two forms, when in reality it isn't. There's a wonderful podcaster from down in Sarnia, Windsor area. She's called the Fat Feminist Witch.
Oh, she's fantastic.
I love her. And I feel so guilty. I have to be honest. I feel so guilty because I got into it with her a few years ago when I was in a different place in my life.
Right.
And because she was asking the question, and it's a fantastic question. Like I really want to reconnect with her and ask her where she got with it. She was asking, for women like me who aren't going to have children, where in this threefold system of crone, maiden, and mother, where do I fit in that?
Mm-hmm.
What other forms could I fit into this? And for me, I went all like, this is me in my fury mode, armchair, occultist, that kind of idea, right? Is, oh, well, you can't take that away. How dare you? That's a sacred system for people, blah, 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 right? Now I'm in a much more mature part of my life, and I understand that lived experience, but I'm like, Paige, that is a fantastic question. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and I've always, that example always sticks with me because that really embodies that that punches the wall and says, yeah, where am I in this threefold system? Just like queer folk, where are we in this kind of, the mother and the father? Like, can we not have the daddy and the son, You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I hope if Paige is watching this, I really hope that we can have that conversation now that I'm in a much better place.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but it's fantastic. But I feel like for queer folk who are owning their spirituality and their sexuality, and their gender identity, that is the switching point. That's when it becomes less a validation and more of a I see it in my world.
Yeah.
And so I'm honoring my world. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have you had Paige on your podcast? I think you should totally have her on your podcast.
I think well, she would make a great guest. I think we have a great conversation. She has a great personality. Yeah. I mean, my wish list of guests is so long, which is great because that just means, well, not like everyone that I ask is gonna, obviously come on. But I mean, I just have such a huge wish list of guests, and I haven't had anyone turn me down.
Oh, wonderful. That's good.
Wait. No, I haven't had anyone turn me down. I had one that agreed, we set the date and time, and then they were just a no-show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And then you have me who thought that we were meeting last night, not today.
I totally panicked because I interviewed Laura Tempest Zakroff.
Oh yes, I saw that. You posted that, didn't you?
Yeah, but our interview was supposed to be last Tuesday, and she'd asked if we can move it to yesterday. And I do one interview a week just because 2 interviews like that does take up a lot of time.
Oh, totally.
And either I'm super busy with work and now here's like 6 hours that I'm not working, or like today I finally have all my orders shipped out today. And tonight, if I wasn't doing the podcast, I would have, there's a couple of candles I have to label, then I would have just relaxed because I've been go for these past couple weeks. It's been it's been 4 weeks now of just constant go, but I've done like 8 weeks worth of business in this 4-week period. So it wasn't ideal, because now I have 2 podcasts to do this week. Technically 3 because we did part 1 with you. But she was at the tail end of finishing a manuscript. And so she asked if we could move it to tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, it's no problem. Last week I was so friggin' busy that it was like a godsend when she emailed me to ask to move it. So then when you send me the message and I'm just getting ready to go in with Lauren, I'm like, oh, what did I do? And then I looked at my calendar. I'm like, okay, well, I put it down with Ben for Wednesday, but maybe my calendar's wrong. Let me check my Zoom link. And it was Wednesday. I'm like, okay, I'm right. Ben's wrong.
Yes.
You're
okay.
I don't have to feel guilty about double booking Ben and Laura on the same day. So yeah.
I feel you though. I feel like I'm in the same way. I've started booking all my people for my season 2. I just did an episode of Morgan Daimler. I don't know if you know her.
Yes. Yeah.
It's wonderful, absolutely wonderful book.
Yeah. The name of her book, say it for me because I can't think of it.
There's 39 of them, so I have a whole choice to.
No, her last book.
Her last book was a field guide to fairies. She's also done one on Odin. She just came out with a she did one on Morrigan years ago.
I thought it was her last book. Anyway, never mind. Anyways, I can't think of the title. Anyways, yeah. How did that go?
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was absolutely wonderful. But what I love about these podcasts and stepping into interviewing is I have had the chance to connect with some really cool individuals. People who, you know, when you're reading their books, right? You think and you project and you have all these ideas about who they'll be. And then when they're actually sitting in your chair and you can, you know, really connect with them and talk with them, like they're sweethearts, you know. People like to talk about themselves, they just don't know how. That's what I found.
Exactly. My hardest interview was with Thorn Mooney, and not in a bad way. It was because within the first 30 seconds, because we've only ever interacted on Twitter. So within the first 30 seconds of us being face-to-face on camera, it felt like I was chit-chatting with a girlfriend that I've known ever since high school. And I had such a hard time keeping myself on track because I could have easily just slipped into a conversation with her just about shit, nothing related to any, you know what I mean? And because literally within the first 30 seconds, like I've known Thorn. We went to high school together. I've known Thorn for the past 25 years. I just want to chit chat with this friend of mine. So that was hard to keep on track. But yeah, it's fantastic. It's just fantastic to chat with people and get to know people and get to know their stories. And the majority of the people that I interview, when I hit, stop recording, and then, we chat for a few minutes afterwards after the recording's done, they're like, you got me to say things I've never said in public. You're so easy to talk to. You create such a comfortable, safe space. And I just opened up, and I've never said this to anyone before. I've never said this in public. I've never said this on a podcast. So it's good. So I think I'm doing, the right thing. I'm
absolutely
thing, and I'm guessing people are enjoying the podcast because people keep listening to it. So,
with like 4 hours per episode, some of them, right? I mean,
what's that?
Like 3 hours, 4 hours per episode. That amount of time just sitting and chit chatting, you see that humanity, but with some people, it does take a bit of a process to kind of build that rapport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, is fine, because the evolution of that conversation is just as fascinating.
Yes.
Because it can be a very like, you don't know the person, and the questions and the answers are very, I'm just gonna say, professional, polished and clean. But then, you get comfortable and you get relaxed, and the personality, like the real personality, starts coming through.
Yeah.
So if that process takes a while, that's even fine, because that's fascinating to watch that progression, And I mean, even if no one listened to the podcast, I would do this just because it's just fun chatting with people.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why I started my podcast, was I was looking to connect and also network.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to network with people who not only have opened opportunities and doors for me, but also while serving that need to, put myself out there as well, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like people, and it's always funny when you ask people who are not used to being interviewed, their reaction to it versus those people who are very seasoned, like interviewees, you can tell.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of finding the identity of your podcast, right? So like with me, my signature question is always, and what did you learn about yourself? And when I ask that, even though I've told people before, it always trumps them, because people aren't used to thinking of that way,
Exactly.
And then,
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so tell the listeners where they can find you, like your social media, your websites, your podcast,
absolutely,
all of that. This is all going to be in the show notes, folks.
Perfect.
Just go ahead and
absolutely. So everything is on my hub, Paducah Wellness, PADUKA wellness.com. That's where you can find about my work, you can find my blog, you can find my podcast, you can find all my various classes and things like I put out. So that is really the central of all my social media stuff. I'm really bad with social media though. Like my Instagram hasn't had a post on it for a few months. So, but check out my YouTube page. Again, it's all on there. You can find my interviews on there too.
So you're okay. So yeah, you're bad at social media, but you do have social media. Like you have an Instagram.
Well, I say that. I mean, I'm much more. You can find a lot more content on Facebook. My website kind of encapsulates it all. So, like Facebook, I'm very active on my business page. You can find that through my main website. My main website, it has everything on it. Okay. YouTube, I post a lot too. Instagram, not so much. TikTok,
people can get your YouTube from your website.
Everything is found on the website, so all the links are on the website.
Okay, perfect. So that I'll just put the Paducah Wellness link there, and then people can go on there, because that's what I do. Like I have my link page, leilokensalwin.com/links, and it can take people to my social media, to like my Leilo Gonzalez social media, the the Lux Files social media, the YouTube channel, the online shop, and all of that. It's just convenient,
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
For people,
Yeah. It gets really confusing when you have like social media all over the place, and they're not integrated and they're not, it just gets confusing, right?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Well, I guess that's it. I mean, we've been at it now since 7 p.m. and it's almost 11. So
yeah, that's pretty good going.
Yeah, we definitely created good content.
Yeah, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show.
No, it was so great. It was
good to see you.
Yeah, it was fun to do this sort of cross promotion thing with you. So and again, just to remind the listeners that we did previous to this interview, we did an interview for Ben's podcast, which is gonna drop or dropped before this one.
Exactly. Yeah, a couple of days before. So
yeah. So, and again, like they can get to that episode through the Paducah Wellness link that's in the show notes. And so if you listen to that one first and then this one, great. If you haven't listened to that one, when you finish with this one, go over and listen to that one, because that one's all about me and you want to hear all about me. So yeah. So I'll say goodnight to the listeners, and I will talk to you guys again on episode 26. Say goodbye, Ben.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lux Files. You'll find all the guest links in the show notes, as well as the link www.leiloganzalwyn.com/links. That link will get you to my page of links, where you can then go to my Leilo Gonzalwyn website, the Lux Files page, and my Leilo Gonzalwyn YouTube channel that has all the Lux Files videos. It also has all my social media links there, so you can follow me and the Lux Files. And don't forget to subscribe to the Lux Files wherever you get your podcasts. And lastly, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving me a review. Until next time.